It is time to free Damian Lillard. He is an all-NBA caliber player still. He's one of the best guards in the entire league, and he is just wasting away on a bad Trailblazers team. A team that began the year pretty solid. They look like a playoff team, and since then, they have fallen apart. They are not good. They cannot guard, and without Dame on the floor, they are nothing. And it almost feels like a situation where we need to save Dame from himself, because for years, we've heard about this loyalty that he has to Portland and the fact that he really enjoys being like the main guy, and he wants to try and win a title there in Portland and all this stuff. And like, that makes total sense, dude. Like, that sentiment makes 100% sense until you are an irrelevant postseason player for years when you're as good as Damian Lillard is. I know they've signed him to extensions, and he's said publicly multiple times he doesn't want to get moved. It needs to happen. They need to move on. It will help their team rebuild properly. They've got other guys they can trade like Nurkic and Jeremy Grant. There's no upside to this team. There's no way they can improve significantly within the next 5 years without a Damian Lillard trade. It makes sense for both sides. So today, we're going to imagine this scenario in which the Trailblazers are ready to trade Damian Lillard. Really quickly though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, PrizePicks. And right off the bat, I want to let you know about a free square that PrizePicks is offering right now. As we go into championship weekend here in the NFL, they have a free square for Joe Burrow. If he passes for one or more passing yards this weekend, then that is a free square selection on any groups of players you want to put together. You can combine that with basketball stuff as well. It's a great way to get started on PrizePicks. In addition to the normal offer that is down in the description below, you can use code SPORTY. You can click on the link to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. So two different offers this week and this weekend as we go into NFL Championship weekend that, again, you could also combine with all of your normal NBA stuff. Now, if you don't know what PrizePicks is, basically it is you against these numbers. You go online, you go on the app, and you pick between 2 and 5 players, and you select more or less for each of these numbers. So again, for the NFL, there's passing yards, there's touchdowns, there's rushing yards, everything you can think of. They already have a lot of those up as well in advance of the games this weekend. And then, of course, in the NBA, points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers, made steals, all that stuff together. It's you against the numbers. You pick more or less for between 2 and 5 players on your selection. And if you win, if you get them correct, you win some cash. And again, you can click that link in the description. You can use code SPORTING at PrizePicks for that 100% deposit match up to $100 to help you get started. And you have that free square selection for this weekend as well. So if you've never used PrizePicks before, this weekend is an awesome opportunity, a great time to go ahead and get started. And thank you again to PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. And in that scenario, there is one team that by far, if I could just snap my fingers and make it happen and have Damian Lillard be on a new team, the team I would want him to be on is the Dallas Mavericks, because more than any other semi-contending, semi-decent team in the entire league, Dallas, more than any team in the league that you would count as one of those, needs some kind of secondary offensive player around their star. Luka is unbelievable, but the amount of offensive responsibility he has on a night-to-night basis is on the level of like peak James Harden and peak Russell Westbrook, and it's just not sustainable. Not just in terms of being a decent playoff team like I'm sure Dallas wants to be, but it's just not sustainable in terms of like physically carrying a team through the year. And the concept for each of these deals, you can see the Dallas one on the screen now, is basically this is outlining the most that each of these teams could possibly offer in exchange for Damian Lillard. Not necessarily what would be a smart trade, but what they could realistically expect to give up and go to Portland and say, this is like the most that we can give you. And unfortunately for Dallas, it's not very much. Like, Josh Green would have to be in the trade. They have some future first round picks that they can trade. You can see that it's difficult for them to match salaries in any real significant way. It's not an ideal trade for Portland, and ultimately one that they would not accept, I don't think, unless something went catastrophically, drastically wrong. But that's the issue here for Dallas, is this is the team that I wanted to go to. I think him and Luka alongside each other would be awesome offensively. They can both play on or off the ball. Defensively, you'd have to figure some stuff out, but that's the case with Dallas anyway. I would love to just snap my fingers and make Damian Lillard a Dallas Maverick in exchange for every first round pick you could possibly give them. But unfortunately, this has been the issue with Dallas. It's one of the reasons why they don't have a sidekick alongside Luka. They don't have young players. They don't have guys that are valuable that they can send out in a trade. They lost Jalen Brunson in free agency. They traded some stuff away a few years ago for KP. That didn't work out. And now they're looking at like Spencer Dinwiddie isolations when Luka's off the floor. And it's unfortunate. Next up, though, is a team that does actually have the ability to put together a trade package that I think could interest Portland in a trade. And more importantly, they're on the other side of the league. They're in the other conference, and that is the Miami Heat. Now, in this scenario, it gets weird. In a couple of these trades, it gets weird with salary matching because just the way some of these contracts work. So if you're confused about why a particular player is randomly in there, it's probably so that the salaries can make sense. But in this deal, Miami is getting Damian Lillard in exchange for basically Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson dumping his salary, and the 3 first-round picks that they can actually trade at the moment. And like, yes, they could technically give up more. Like they could trade Bam and get back Yusuf Nurkic, but realistically, like Miami's not trading both Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo in exchange for Damian Lillard. This would be an interesting situation because they'd move on from the Lowry thing, provide them an offensive spark that they desperately need, and put Dame in a situation that actually would allow him to possibly compete for a title in a real way rather than like just wasting away there in Portland. Obviously, you know, if you're Portland, this is better than the Dallas offer because you do have that foundational piece of Hero. But those future first-round picks are just not that valuable because Miami just seems to always be good. And then Kyle Lowry is basically just there for salary. So again, this doesn't feel like that realistic of an option either. And also, because this is a Damian Lillard video, I have to mention the possibility of a Lakers trade. However, in going through this and trying to come up with a Lakers trade, you'll see the one on screen here. Like, this is not a realistic deal. This is not something I would actually expect to happen. There is no way that the Lakers can make a trade in exchange for Damian Lillard without trading away Russell Westbrook. And Westbrook provides no value to Portland. They're not trying to win. There's no reason to have him there. And he provides minimal value to other teams if you were able to send Russ to a different team and get some stuff back to then also send to Portland. And even as valuable as some teams think that 27 and 29 future first round picks are from the Lakers, given how bad they might be at that point, they just don't have anything else. Like, unless they're considering trading Anthony Davis in exchange for Damian Lillard, there just isn't a Lakers trade possibility here. Next up now is Phoenix. And I got excited about this one initially, thinking that it would be pretty easy to put together a trade for Phoenix. And it is not. Like, this makes no sense. It's Dame, Yusuf Nurkic, and Gary Payton going back to Phoenix because Gary Payton needs to be there for salaries. And then the Blazers are getting Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Cam Johnson, and 4 firsts. The nice thing about Phoenix, and one of the reasons I thought this would be relatively realistic, is the fact that they have all their future first round picks. They haven't made a big time trade, trading away all these future firsts like a lot of these other teams. And I thought that there would be like a DeAndre Ayton and a lot of picks structure that would make sense here. And it just doesn't exist. Like, there's no real way to make this work because if you're trading away Ayton, they don't have another 5 on the roster. So it's like, okay, well, you can give them Nurkic, but then adding that salary means you have to include Chris Paul, and then you have to have Cam Johnson there to provide a little bit more value to Portland than all these future picks. And something that I forgot to mention this entire time is if you are yourself going out there making trades revolving around Damian Lillard in Portland, you can't add salary to the roster. You can't add like any part of their salary at all. You cannot take back more money than you're sending out because they are right at the luxury tax line and they don't want to pay the luxury tax and they want to get the other teams around the league's luxury tax payments. They're avoiding that at all costs. They're not taking on any salary. So you have to make sure that all that stays under, and it just makes it really complicated. And this doesn't work either. Like, at first I was like, oh yeah, Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton, and 4 future first round picks in exchange for Damian Lillard, but needing a big really complicates that. Then you have Chris Paul and Dame on the same team, and it's not a clean fit at all. Which leads me to what I believe as of this moment to be the most quote-unquote realistic destination for Damian Lillard if Portland was to decide they wanted to move him, which, as I established in the intro, is the right thing to do for them. And that's the New York Knicks. And I know it might seem a little bit weird because they just brought in Jalen Brunson, who's playing at a borderline all-star level, but obviously Lillard is a significant upgrade over Brunson. They're not trading away Brunson in this scenario, so they'd have to figure out something there. But in this scenario, the Knicks are getting Corey Joseph, again, salaries, and Damian Lillard in exchange for Fournier, RJ Barrett, Quentin Grimes, all the first-round picks, and then they're sending away Derrick Rose, again, for salary reasons, to Detroit for 2 future second-round picks. So basically, this is RJ salary stuff and every first, which for New York is a lot, that they can possibly trade away in exchange for Damian Lillard. And then you have Dame, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson. Yeah. Like, it doesn't sound that exciting, right? Like, at first it's like, oh my gosh, Dame in New York, like, that's going to be awesome. And yes, it's going to be a better situation than Portland, but this doesn't put them into championship contention territory. And then they've used up all their assets. And again, this is the most they could offer. It's not necessarily something I would expect them to actually trade in exchange for Dame, given his age and contract and things like that. But that's why I kind of phrased it the way I did when I was like, this is the most quote unquote realistic. But even when you look at it, it doesn't really feel like that realistic of an option. And so as much as I think it's the right move for both Portland and Dame to move on and find a new home for him, it's a really difficult thing to do. This guy's making a ton of money. He's, in his mid-30s, And there's just not a lot of teams out there that have like an up and coming guard that they can trade away and then allow Dame to fit pretty seamlessly into their roster. Really, the best option is a team like the Mavericks, who really desperately need Dame, but unfortunately they just don't have the assets. And finding that combination of like a team that needs Dame, a team that's trying to contend, a team that wants to add him, alongside the fact that they also have the assets to make the trade work and the motivation to make the trade work, is a very difficult, almost impossible situation to find. And that's before you even get through the fact that for whatever reason, neither the team nor Dame want to move on. Like, again, as I said in the intro, I can totally understand the mindset of being like, if he ever was to somehow put it together and win a title in Portland, it would mean a ton. Like 100% I get that. It would be probably one of the greatest stories in NBA history. If after all this, he actually stayed loyal to the team and they were able to figure it out. They have shown zero ability to do that. Like, I know they made a Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago when they still had CJ, but like whatever they've tried to do to this roster over the last couple of years, they've tweaked it, they've added guys, they've spent money, they've traded away picks, they've done everything they can, and it just doesn't work. They don't have enough star power around Dame. They don't have enough wings that can guard. And even as good as Jeremy Grant has been at times this year, and as good as in the past Yusuf Nurkic has been, and the combination of Dame and CJ, the West is too good. They don't have options. And even though I would like to see one of these kinds of trade structures work in exchange for Damian Lillard this season, feels like that's not going to happen.